laws are absolute laws passed down through religious scriptures. Divine law and human authority. These two ideas have been at conflict since the beginning. So what are they? Divine laws are absolute laws passed down through religious scriptures and figures usually known as prophets. These laws are said to come from the gods themselves, apply universally to all regardless of circumstances, and are believed to be rooted in a consistent and absolute sense of morality. Human authority, on the other hand, is the direct authority that a person, group, or entity holds over other people. This authority applies itself based on the will of its creators and only extends as far as their own ability to enforce it. Examples of adherence to divine law can be found through the characters of Tiresias and Antigone. Antigone acts on the divine law requiring that all those who die must be buried, going against the human law set by Creon mandating that her brother Polynices not be buried. Antigone, when captured, refuses to acknowledge Creon's law, stating that not only is his law unjust, but that the laws of the gods supersede his authority as a human king. Tiresias, while also a follower of divine law, is slightly different from Antigone in the fact that he instead serves as a prophet. Tiresias is able to communicate the will of the gods to Creon and the others through his visions, allowing him to serve as a prophet of the same divine law that Antigone references. On the other hand, the two characters that adhere to human authority are Ismene and Creon. Unlike her sister, Ismene instead chooses to follow the laws set forth by Creon, and refuses to go with her to bury their brother. She does this not out of reverence or respect for Creon's authority as king, but out of fear for her own life. Even when her own sister Antigone pressures her, she simply responds, "But think of the danger. Think of what Creon will do." Ismene refuses to do as divine law mandates because she is too afraid to stomach the consequences of going against Creon, and does not think of Creon's authority comes not from a place of divine power, justice, or morality, but from the physical and material power he wields over the residents of Thebes as its king. Creon, meanwhile, possesses a near unwavering belief in his own authority, and simply refuses to acknowledge the idea that divine law could ever supersede it. Even when faced with backlash from his own son Haemon, he chooses to sidestep the issue entirely rather than acknowledge divine power. Changing the subject to Haemon's relationship with Antigone instead, "You have no right to trample on God's right. Fool, adolescent fool, taken in by a woman." 2:21. It is only when the prophet Tiresias warns him of impending divine retribution does Creon begrudgingly decide to change his mind, cementing his character as one that only acknowledges direct coercive power rather than that of the divine.
There are many examples throughout history of autocratic rulers rejecting or sidestepping divine law in order to maintain their power, as Creon did. One extreme example of this would be Soviet dictator Joseph Stalin, who not only went against divine law during his rule, but actively made an effort to stamp out religion throughout the Soviet Union. To do this, he openly launched an atheist 5-year plan in 1932, which targeted many of the most prominent religions and religious figures in the country with propaganda, systemic discrimination, and extrajudicial punishment. Stalin, not unlike Creon at the end of Antigone, recognized the power that divine law has. Only, rather than caving to it like Creon does, he instead held his ground and fought against it directly. By the time his rule came to an end, thousands of places of worship and religious centers, including churches, mosques, synagogues, and even monasteries, had been abandoned, shut down, or destroyed, and hundreds of thousands of people were killed or imprisoned for their religious practice. But despite the monumental lengths Stalin and those who succeeded him went to in order to root out belief in divine law, they never truly won the battle, as it failed to turn the public perception against religion. Towards the end of its lifespan, the USSR was forced to cut back on its persecution of religion under its final leader Mikhail Gorbachev, but by then, the Soviet Union was already in decline. After the Soviet Union fell, religious freedom was written into the constitution of the Russian Federation and remains there to this day, mirroring Creon's own failure to adhere to divine law until it was too late.
While there are many examples throughout history of human authority going against divine law, there are also many times when human authority either derives its power from or works in tandem with divine law. One such example can be seen in the head of the Catholic Church, otherwise known as the Pope. Although its influence has decreased in recent times, the papacy, also known as the office of the Pope, was a position of great power and authority throughout history, and has managed to withstand the test of time in a way that no other leader has managed to replicate. The very first person to be considered Pope was Saint Peter in the 1st century AD, who was able to spread and organize early Christianity despite immense persecution at the hands of the Roman Empire. As one of the 12 apostles, Saint Peter was entrusted with communicating the divine law of the Christian God in a fashion similar to Tiresias's role of communicating the god's wishes in the story of both Oedipus and Antigone. However, not only was Saint Peter looked up to as a source of divine wisdom, he was also seen as a leader and a unifier of the Christian faith. This role has been passed down to each of his successors within the Catholic Church for over 2,000 years, and has solidified the role of Pope as one of outstanding historical influence. As the head of the Catholic Church, the Pope derives their power from Christian divine law, as they are seen as the person most capable of both interpreting and enforcing it. The Pope's authority as a human comes from their perceived knowledge of and dedication to divine law, rather than from traditional means like material wealth or military might. This gives the Pope a significant degree of power over devout Catholics, and allowed them at the height of the Church's popularity to go as far as to raise armies, depose kings, and launch entire crusades with their influence alone. The Pope's authority became so closely tied with the divine law of Catholicism that the two became almost synonymous, allowing many popes to wield authority rivaling that of kings, even without any form of standing army. While the Pope's direct political power and influence has steadily decreased after the 1900s, when many formerly Christian governments began to secularize and the prevalence of Catholicism in Europe started to decline, to this day it still remains a highly respected position recognized by nations around the world, and a testament to the influence and longevity of the Christian faith. The survival of religion throughout the USSR, as well as the power and longevity of the 2,000-year-old papacy, can both be attributed to this, and it is the very same reason why Antigone willingly faced death to bury her brother. Divine law has the power to reach the minds of people in ways that human authority